13th, 2022, 6 p.m. Randy, roll call. Here.
Matthews. Ken Jones.
Here.
Mike Babick. Crystal Hoover.
Here.
All right. Need a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the regular agenda of April 13th, 2022.
Second that.
All right. And it's been moved and seconded. Moving on to the minutes. We got two separate minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the March 9th and February 9th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Moved. And Krista, you gotta
Yeah,
help me out.
second
Okay.
Right.
All right. Anybody opposed to approving the minutes? Or any changes, anything that? Okay. Minutes are approved. We'll go to communications by visitors. Got a few people out there. Anybody have anything they want to share with us before we get started? Harbor Masters report.
All right. Well, of course, it's printed out there, but Zoom meetings with R&M, discussion of harbor layout. Also, geotechnical study with R&M, talking to them about where they're going to bore holes on the shore and in the harbor, and then just giving them some dimensions from the end of the docks to the breakwater, different levels of the breakwater over there. And then PID meetings, Harbor Rebuild Agency meeting, and then just to clear up confusion on the broken pile that Andy brought up. It's the bulkhead that's holding back all the dirt over there by the ramp. So, and then 16 lifts so far, year to date. We got one more space for a boat down there, and we'll be pretty much full unless it's a real small boat. And we have 3 others on the list to come out when someone else goes in the water. So getting busy. And then scheduled for, well, I thought we were going to do May, but it looks like the last week of April, the technician from Travel Lift will be in to work on the Travel Lift and go through everything. So, which will be good. Also do training with the new Travel Lift operator, John Hutchins, go through some other things with him and other tricks of the trade and maintenance. Turned on water on the north side, city dock, ocean dock, water department's getting parts together to get the south side on. Hoping next week we'll have the south side on. So, and we do have water in the shipyard now too. Let's see. Did some maintenance on the north ramp dock, and we hope to have that in on Friday. As long as the weather cooperates with us. And then walk around, prioritize the docks that need immediate major repairs. And then clean sumps. Started rebuilding another finger float from K float. Actually, that one just went in, and we're doing another one over on J. And then, let's see, 2 employees to bloodborne pathogens and forklift operator training. Hired Ryan Navarro as a maintenance person in the harbor, full-time, working out well. Then we sent one person to CPR, and then myself and another employee going to CPR tomorrow. Slip name tags, security detail for Sampson barge, and clean vehicles shop, and restrooms.
Anybody have any questions? Clarification?
Hey, Max.
I guess I've got a question. So you mentioned that the shipyard is at capacity and with a wait list. Is that basically what you're saying there?
Correct, right now, yeah.
And is that just for the maintenance area, or is that for the entire
That's
shipyard?
pretty much the whole thing. I mean, we could probably stuff one other boat somewhere, but gotta be careful not to block someone if they decide they need to go
It'd be
in.
double stacking
Yeah.
if you did that.
Yeah, so.
Is that something like a travel lift trailer would help with? You
It
think?
might, oh, yeah, no, I mean, I think it would have helped. Also, a lot of people came out because we had a kind of a delay where we were down for a while and didn't have an operator and training and Jerry doing work. So, we pushed a couple other boats back a couple months. So
Yeah.
usually we don't get quite that full, but we come close. It would definitely help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do
And
you
that-
feel like the weather contributed to some of everybody wanting to come out right now?
yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. So, yeah. And you did bring up, since you brought it up, I did look into a travel lift. Well, when I talked to Travel Lift to order parts, they said they have a 70-ton self-propelled trailer in Seattle. That's for sale. I have not got the information from them, but I asked them to send me the specs and the age and hours and all that on it. So I think he said around 300 grand. So plus shipping, but so they're supposed to give me the information this week. So
Thanks.
yep.
Oh, I guess another question regarding shipyard. Have you talked to Paul about, we've talked for a year now anyway, about more pedestals. Is that,
I have, and Paul has not. He was supposed to give me a quote for it, and I talked to him just maybe a month ago, and put it back in his hand and said, "Hey, you know what this is going to cost? We already have some of the meters. We don't have the bases and stuff, but to put meters and do more bases over there." So, yeah.
would that help with the current issue, you think, or?
No, because we got boats sitting over there anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. New business is a resolution before us for 2202. I guess get a motion to approve it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move to approve Resolution 4-22-01, recommending approval of the North Harbor Port Infrastructure Development Program 2022 grant concept as presented.
Second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, so I made the motion to approve it as presented solely to get it onto the table. I do want to maybe offer up some suggestions before we move this forward as far as very minor tweaks, but I really like the plan and I appreciate all the staff's time putting it together.
Okay.
We got Curtis and Kevin here, so
Is there anything, is this specifically referencing a drawing?
what do you mean?
I think it's
I'm
easier.
talking about the resolution is,
Yes, the resolution is the drawings, and that's your information for the resolution.
okay,
Yeah.
Although I think the resolution is referencing this updated drawing you've been handed out today, which includes some details that are not in the drawing from last week. I just got the updated concept back today. So the T-Doc's new, fire suppression, lawn trampoline, probably a few other items we can run through and talk about.
okay. Does anybody have any problems with the verbiage, with the text of the resolution before we get to the drawings? Okay,
So on the T-Dock, I guess, is that additional cranes out there? Is that what these dots are?
Yep.
Okay.
One of which I now see is not marked as a 5-ton, but the idea was for that, the one that the large vessels moored at in the satellite photo would be a 5-ton crane.
Oh, so that would be putting the big one on the dock?
Yeah, and we talked about that today, and I did talk to Curtis about it, and I think we definitely have to restructure that. I think we have to really look at that.
Okay.
the dock is set up for it?
No, it is not set up for a 5-ton, and so I think it just definitely would have to be retrofitted to see if it would work. So, and I didn't think of it till Kenny mentioned it today.
So I guess there's like a couple slight tweaks I'd like to, throw out there. And I like the idea of having a 5-ton crane. That's, I think, very much missing and needed for the larger vessels. I guess the ideal location in my mind for, I guess, ease of having it structural, tied into behind that fuel dock would be a lot easier. 'Cause to put a big crane in there because you could pour a bunch of concrete while you're, sheet piling it, and then you could have a big counterweight buried underneath the fill that it's bolted to. The only problem would be that you wouldn't, the way that this is drawn, you wouldn't really be able to get something like the Northern Mariner in there.
Yeah.
So
You're talking about the crane that's sort of just inshore of what would be the
yeah,
fuel dock.
right where we dredge out.
Move that if we're taking out the old grid, can we move that crane over so a big dock or big boat could get
That was
midships
going to
to
be
it instead of like have it?
That was going to be one of the, I guess, suggestions I had. Also, with the, you have it as yellow, leased space around that crane and a boardwalk around that crane. I think that would cause some issues utilizing that crane to its full capacity. Kind of need to maybe adjust where that boardwalk comes to maybe street side and give us a working area around that crane for
A loading
backing
zone?
Yeah, loading zone for backing trailers. I mean, so some of the ways that people are going to utilize that big crane is going to be to like lift skiffs out of the water, lift seines off of boats in one piece, lifting bait sheds on and off. So you're going to need a turning radius for a trailer. I'm thinking I'll go get certified and use that crane, and I'll have a trailer for my bait shed. I'll have it'll keep your trailers from going in and out of the salt water when you're pulling your skiffs. There's benefits to being able to do that. Lifting my skiff onto the stern of my boat before I drive down to Sitka, for instance, and then when I get back, I'd pick my skiff up and set it in the water because it's going to be a lot safer than trying to launch it off the stern of my boat and potentially swamping the skiff. So, that was one of the suggestions. Just slightly tweak that area a little bit. Another suggestion is over by the Reluctant Fisherman where you have like the lookout, just moving it to the other side of that alleyway because then you wouldn't be blocking your snow dump. I felt like that would be a pretty easy change to make, and it would help the streets guys out because they do utilize that with their loaders to push snow down there. I did want to ask staff what the thinking was on putting the sidewalk on the post office side of the street instead of on the Trident Seafood side of the street. I know right now the traditional walking path is on the Trident Seafood side of the street, and then in the winter with snow removal, that post office roof, especially on high snow years, will completely block that sidewalk if you put it on the post office side of the street. So, and I think it increases the amount of times that those pedestrians will have to cross traffic, which is what we're trying to avoid. And then right at the like Baja Taco ramp area, 3-stage ramp area, same thing. I think that maybe having that on the other side of the street, like on the Baja Taco side of the street, would be better to alleviate the congestion that we're trying to combat with this project. So those are.
Can you describe that a little more for me?
Yeah, so you'd have a street crossing to the existing sidewalk, like on that yield sign by the pool.
So just the thinking behind that was we had originally had the sidewalk on the Trident side, but then our thought was that with all of the traffic in and out of the processors there, that it would actually be safer for pedestrians on the opposite side of the street. And so that crosswalk by the post office would be designed in a way to discourage people from continuing south and crossing the street to use that.
Mm-hmm.
And same kind of with the thinking down by the boat launch. And, it wouldn't just go directly through like it's shown in the photo. Like,
yeah, it'd
still
follow the contour.
But the thinking is, people are going to walk where they're going to walk. And I guess if we already have the sidewalk on the other side of the road, we could possibly do it that way. But the thought was that people are going to walk through there anyway. So at least we would have a defined path to help, just give that visualization of where pedestrians should be. And having that there also gives a visual reminder for the boat, for the trucks that are going in and out, that there is pedestrians in the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. On that, anyway, the traffic's gonna be going through both of the crosswalks anyway, coming out of the Camry, so basically you're not doing anything. You're just getting that one road going in and out of that plant, that traffic going down that section, or whatever the avenue, railroad avenues, anything going in that Camry's coming across those crosswalks. You're not really saving any traffic. The Camry's just not pulling out and parking, they're going up and down that street. So you're gonna have the crosswalks, the Camry's either going one way
Yeah,
or
but
another.
there's a lot of forklift activity that goes on along the building. So that was just the thought there.
Usually not on the outside there. That's,
It does seem
Yeah.
like it would be cleaner to go down that side of the street and not make those two crossings.
I guess I just,
Even though I do see you're saying cars could back up over people, but
Well, like you
It's
said,
also
people are
busy
gonna
on
walk
the
where
side.
They're gonna walk, and they're gonna walk over there. It's hard to break, Cordova folks have been walking that stretch forever, and so to retrain them to walk someplace else is not likely.
yeah, I guess my thinking on that is, the majority of the pedestrian traffic that we're, I guess, combating is might be a too strong of a word, but that we're trying to help. We're trying to make it more walkable and stuff. I would say that the predominant issue is the seasonal workers at those processing facilities. And so, we're trying to assist them in having a better and safer walking path between the two, I see it as more natural to have it next to that bunkhouse because that's where all those pedestrians are coming and going from, I guess. I do totally understand your point of view there with the forklift traffic. That's a consideration. The other thing is just the amount of traffic coming and going through that post office parking lot is immense year round and not just seasonal. And so I guess, maybe consider bringing that down the reluctant side of the street, at least past their bunkhouse and, maybe cross there or, just to avoid that blind corner on that post office.
got
Or,
the entrance to the Cordova Center, you got the entrance to the back of the post office. You got a lot going on
yeah.
that side of the street.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, it's, that's why we're trying to do this project, right? Because there's a lot of traffic in that zone, and I don't know the best way to skin the cat, but those are, I guess, my opinions on it. So take that into consideration.
The Uplands timber, like where the grid currently is, it says Uplands bulkhead with timber boardwalk not in contract. What is that?
Which of the 3 sheets are you on there?
Page 3.
3 sheets, so,
Yeah, so I assume that is
how do we, 03, yep,
Yeah.
the third sheet.
E&D's Uplands concept for the RAISE grant, I think is what's being referenced there, which actually has never been that well defined to my knowledge, and is the piece we're looking to fund at the moment for the South Harbor rebuild. So I think that's fairly vague. I wasn't aware Timber Boardwalk was actually in the Uplands concept for RAISE, and that might just be a glitch on this photo. But I'm not sure we have a very firm Uplands concept for RAISE because it's totally funding contingent right now.
that bulkhead they're talking about, is that sheet metal bulkhead or timber?
For the South Harbor or the North Harbor?
Yeah. South Harbor, well, right here it says that for that.
Yeah, I assume metal sheet pile, but
Yeah.
It says Uplands.
some type of retaining wall. And this is back to a conversation that I guess Kenny had with Mark Keller at the kickoff meeting for the South Harbor rebuild around the various types of retaining walls.
Okay, this is with timber bulkhead.
Yeah.
So that's the bowed kind. That's a little bit cheaper to build. That ties back under the fill. You don't have to drive it so deep. That's
Yeah, I
what
mean,
this is.
do you guys have a preference for bulkhead type to be included in the grant concept?
No, I think it's whatever can accomplish the project on budget.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure about the timber boardwalk idea, but
for the North Harbor.
or for just
Well, it
boardwalks
looks like
in
it's
general.
more in the South Harbor, but
I like.
Do we
I don't
have
know.
that same in the North Harbor? I don't see it written like
Yeah,
that over
that's-
there. You see timber boardwalk?
It says boardwalk, I'm not sure it says timber
No.
specifically.
Yeah, it just says boardwalk, I guess. But then it
Well,
delineates the concrete sidewalks from the boardwalk. So
I don't know if we got that defined on the South Harbor Boardwalk. Were we talking like cantilever timber? Wasn't that brought up at one point, or? I don't
that
remember.
was an option in the 2013
Okay.
development meetings. I remember.
Yeah, I don't.
So that was discussed back then. Yeah, I mean, as far as boardwalk material, I'd rather just see what the, I guess, experts say on that, but I'm not so sure that timber is going to be the best
Yeah.
option for our community, just weather-wise with the freeze and thaw we get.
I think timber's what's in Whittier, what P&D built there is probably why they included that material.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is Cordova, compared to Whittier and Valdez, gets substantially more freeze thaw. And, I mean, they are in very similar climate, but I feel like they are, on average, in the winter a lot colder than we are by a couple of degrees. And I worry about I mean, that's the same reason why I'm not a huge fan of the timber floats, because I just feel like the freeze thaw here just hammers them. But another question I had is on this second launch ramp. I really am happy that you included that, because that's a thing that I've been pushing for years. Is that to scale? Is there a reason why it's narrower, or is it just a picture thing?
I got the idea to chip end of the week last week after listening to this commission last
Okay.
week. So this is all sort of happening on the fly. They moved the grant deadline forward 2 months and trying to publicly vet and design at the same time here. So yeah, I agree. I'm not sure why it's so skinny.
Yeah, I would suggest widen it out. And then I noticed that, I mean, it's kind of hard to see. It says it's not included in contract, but one of the things that we had talked about, I see they have the green belt for the Fisherman's Memorial kind of moved over in front of like NVE area on sheet 3 of 3.
Sheet 3.
There's parking between the grid ramp and the Fisherman's Memorial. I know in one of our drawings we had discussed making that leasable space for food trucks and Greenbelt community gathering space. So
I don't think, is this referencing any
No,
change over there at all? No,
this is just the
this isn't
PIDP.
anything on that side. It ends
Where they're,
at that
yeah, the concrete sidewalk is.
concrete walk.
okay,
So it's not referencing anything past the launch ramp and the walkway.
okay.
And then I should note, many of these items are sort of designed to score points at its most basic. So I heard a few comments about the fanciness of showers included on the North Harbor side. Harbor gets about $6,000 of revenue a year from the South Harbor showers, and the BCA will be over a 20-year payback schedule. So just adding up these little pieces where the return on investment is greater than what they're funding just strengthens the grant application. So, and that thinking is applied to a lot of these little individual items that maybe seem superfluous. So LED lights, that's all carbon emission points. Waste oil, antifreeze, recycling, making those permanent, again, is environmental points in the grants. Up and out safety letters, safety points, on and on.
And maybe I missed something on these hydrants, or these fire suppression systems, are they just hydrants or are they just fire extinguishers?
Tony?
They're gonna be stub outs. The line will come up and have a connection point for your hoses.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I
High
thought
pressure.
you were gonna have Rolls in there.
Well, we would drain the system in the winter.
Oh, that's what-
Yeah, unless we put in a system to keep them that way, but yeah,
Okay, yeah, I just wondered what they were, them big fire extinguishers or water.
yeah. No, that would be also, we would have the extinguishers, of course, still.
And then I should also note off that I haven't actually received cost estimates for any of this yet, hoping to by the end of this week. But some of these smaller details might move around depending on those cost estimates. So back to, I'll just choose the showers since I threw out numbers. If that somehow came out to more than 120K, and the whole point of including them in the projects to increase the BCA numbers, that would then be cut. So some of these details are maybe moving around still.
I guess one other thing, we already are going to be dredging for the fuel float. I had a gentleman who parks on the North Harbor side who wanted me to make sure to mention that under those floats could use some dredging as well, where those big deep draft boats are, like from the loading dock out. It gets pretty shallow and it fills in. And So that might be something to look at. Maybe while they've got the dredge in place, just going in between those fingers and taking a couple scoops out, like where the Northern Mariner and the Lady Simpson and the Cricket Park. It's pretty shallow there. And at low water, having tenders, like, right, I mean, obviously our goal is to not be unloading tenders where Cam 2 currently is if we move cranes out into another area. But right now the tenders will actually hit at a minus tide and not be able to deliver at that dock. So something to consider while we're in the area dredging already. Really easy to just do a little bit extra, I guess. I don't know if it would score any more points or not, but
Sure.
Is there a problem, like the number of Perkins slips that we're making or something like that, if we use up some more by moving that crane over and that commercial space becomes kind of a regular rectangle?
What do you mean when you say, oh, the space itself would be a rectangle?
I'm on two.
Chip originally had the crane at the very edge of that dredge fill line, and he moved it back for some reason that I can't totally remember at the moment. I can pull that email up now if you wanted more details on it. But I can also refer back to him that it's important to get more space there and find other design solutions.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, it depends on what the person who leases that area does with it as far as to how, like how much you'd be able to access around the crane.
I think the fuel provider, whoever that is, would likely be leasing some of that space. He originally had that broken out as a separate lease item, but it didn't seem useful to be deciding at this moment how much space is for the fuel provider versus other leasable areas. So I just had him make it all commercial lease.
I guess another thing, speaking of, the multipliers, if we were to add a net mending / airplane float into this plan, would it gain us any points where the Forest Service dock is?
I would, cost of the float is probably the first question. Clearly there's a need for net mending floats. All the politics around that space aside, as for whether it strengthens or weakens application, it's hard to say at this time.
Okay. Yeah, I just worry about, I guess the airplane's not in there anymore because the lake's thawed, but they do still utilize that airplane dock a little bit, not all the time, but I would like to see us, still incorporate a net mending and airplane float somewhere in our planning process here, because we are going to lose that with the drive down dock.
Yeah, they don't necessarily have to be tied. Because if there's lots of places we could put a net mending float that would not work at all for.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Yeah, if we're
Like in
dredging that
corner,
yeah,
we talked about putting one there, remember?
it would work for gill netters, but it's not going to work for seiners. I'm looking, I guess it's something that would work for,
It's too shallow back in there.
and just hard to maneuver back there. And really with a seine, like what's nice about the airplane flow right now is you can pull up to one side and stack your net on the dock and then pull around to the other side and drag it across. As far as like a seiner's perspective, it makes it really nice to be able to you'd only get about a half a stretch off our current float, but something like that, maybe it only had one airplane stall, but it is kind of a nice multi-use thing the way we have it right now. And I know I've talked about it in the past. I think that one's fixable if we could just figure out a way to get it out and repair it like we did with the smaller slips. Put on some nice pressure treated timbers and put it back in and move it over. Throw down a couple piles. I think the whole thing could be accomplished for fairly affordably with a little ingenuity and elbow grease.
Yeah. It's interesting construction, the way it was put together for trying to, Tony and I have looked at it, it looks, all its inner ties are rotten. I'm not sure. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with it that money couldn't fix.
Yeah. Whether or not it would be cheaper, it
Right.
might not be.
Right.
You would know more than I would. I know that the floats that you guys have rebuilt, I mean, they look great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They would last a long time. They're better than the way they came because they're one piece of pressure treated instead of finger jointed
Yeah.
bits of non-pressure treated.
So is
The
it-
glue's gone and this finger joint just didn't hold up.
So I don't know if we could repair this one for a couple $100,000 instead of building a new one for $1.5 million. I mean, it would make sense to be able to do that and not lose the infrastructure. But I just feel like that spot's perfect because then the airplanes aren't going to be coming in through all the hectic area, and that mending is
Where would be perfect for the airport?
where the Forest Service dock is. I just feel like that is an ideal space that is underutilized as far as the total harbor user not being able to utilize that valuable space. I just feel like it could value the fleet more if we did something else in that space.
Right. Yes.
And I know that lease is kind of on hold. There's been talks like, well, we need to do North Harbor planning before we decide what we're going to do with it. And I'm like, well, this is kind of what we're doing right now. So I would like to see that space be utilized to benefit the entire fleet instead of just one entity.
Okay. So that is not in this plan. Doesn't necessarily mean that we couldn't do it at another phase because it would be stubbed out at the same spot. The gangway would go down to it. That's what you're envisioning. A bigger float, a wider float than what is there now, which the Forest Service owns. Their float.
Yeah, the floats and the pilings would
Right.
either have to be purchased from
And
the
so-
Forest Service or would have to be moved.
So it would be a wider float that would be walk down ramp, but net mending float.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, you could pull around to both sides of it. It would be a nice, perfect spot for multiple gill nets or a seine. You could maybe have one airplane stall on the end of it or something. And, I mean, maybe we just skip the airplane component. I'm just thinking for as far as scoring transportation points or something, that's just one of the things we're losing that we have right now. And I just don't really like losing when we spend millions of dollars to gain. So yes, it's underutilized. We have 4 right now and only one of them gets used. So, the other thing is the herring population has made a stunning recovery lately. And, I guess my dream is to see that fishery come back and have airplanes parking in the harbor again, but
I have a market for that product.
yeah, there's a pretty good market
we used to
for
put
it.
a lot of airplanes in slips.
Yeah,
We'd still have that option.
yeah, for sure. It's just, I know it's,
And Dave likes to be, lots of times he's pulling, he's,
yeah, I just noticed they were in there the last few weeks, but now that the lake's cleared, he's back in the lake, so. That was another location that I thought would be an ideal spot for a floating fuel dock, potentially, and that would allow for more turning radius for big boats to go into that big crane if that floating fuel dock just moved over.
This floating fuel dock is drawn in here as a representative. Obviously, they would build something
To their specs.
to their specs. Because it does seem like it could hug the beach a little bit and open up that fairway or whatever you want to
For
call it,
sure.
basin there a little
So
more.
closer to the breakwater fill what?
Yeah,
I mean, I know they want to have
I
boats.
mean, you're gonna come in and then you're gonna back out, but you can't.
Yeah.
It's not wide enough to turn, so why crowd the rest of the?
Yep.
And most of those will be in that loading, that fuel dock are gonna be smaller vessels. I don't think you can have Lee Simpson and those size pull in there anyway. You might, they go down to the other dock.
Yeah, I think Shoreside was talking seiners and smaller.
He was gonna have some volume though, if it was not too busy. He'd probably pump fuel wherever he came into.
Have 1,000,000-gallon storage tanks there, some of them.
In the off season, yeah,
30 and 40 gallons a shot, 40,000 gallons a shot.
I bet it'll get really, really busy in season, but yeah, anyways. But still, even a bigger boat could come in and then back up. Doesn't need that much space.
It looks good to me, but
Yeah, well, is there, I guess, then adding another component that this is pretty much ready to submit as a package with a few tweaks. So if we save that Forest Service ramp area, I do think that's a good place for a, versus the utility of tying up a couple trailer boats, 3 maybe trailer boats, to have a designated float for whatever people want to haul off and work on. We can look and see if there's any way we can reuse part of the.
I guess I would like to maybe offer an amendment that we add a whereas, and we add a net mending float into the conceptual before we pass this resolution for that location. So I guess the whereas would be whereas the net mending float will be a great asset to the fleet and reduce gear repair time. I mean, I guess I don't know exactly what words are going to score points here, but I feel like that's just one of the major things that's missing here is, I guess, in our whole overarching harbor plan with the South Harbor and now the North Harbor plan. I feel like that net mending float is something that's going away.
How much utility are the T's going to be on the new South Harbor for what you're talking about doing with the seine?
Well, I would envision not really, because a big tender is going to be tied there is kind of why I wanted those.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm talking like you want the Labrador and the Bulldog and
those would block off the whole way in and out.
Yeah, they would be, that would, I would just say, if it was open, I guess you could go in, dump on one side and
yeah.
to the other, but it would have.
But I'm envisioning it as somebody's stall for like a longer boat, like a 70-foot landing craft, or maybe the Piswax landing craft, or I mean, we've got a big tender tied up out there. I think the Catherine, Ryan Schutze, he just bought it.
Oh, the Catherine, the retrievers.
And he's tied up in a spot where in our other plan we're adding slips in there, and so he won't have a stall for that big boat. That's what the T's were for. So at least that's why I was pushing so hard for him.
Right. So they would work.
I don't. If there's
had one
yeah.
dedicated, but that would be expensive because it's a tie-up slip.
Yeah, and we're trying to not lose slips on that other plan. So I feel like that location is ideal for a net mending / airplane float. Doesn't have to be an airplane float. I would like to see us pass this with another whereas and adding that in before this goes to P&Z. And I mean, we've talked about moving that lease or ending that lease for over a decade now. We've had multiple resolutions that 5 years, and then now that, I mean, that one's already 3 years old now. So this is not like I'm trying to spring something new on at anybody. We've wanted to utilize this area for years. We've talked about it extensively.
And it doesn't mean that the Forest Service doesn't have access to the harbor.
Right.
There's a strong likelihood that they can partner with the state.
Right. Or we can put them into a priority slip somewhere when we get a nice brand new harbor built and give them right, as we could put them right at the bottom of the ramp as a concession.
If their dock was taken away, they would, they require that they have to have a locked facility. So if they can't partner with the state, then they would not have anywhere in the harbor that they would be allowed to have their boat and their equipment.
Every other state harbor, they park on a regular route.
I was gonna say, you go in Whittier, their Forest Service boats just
Yeah,
park at slips and
This is
trooper
just
boats
going off
parked
of
at
what
slips.
it-
Yeah, they're saying that because they don't want to lose what they have.
But they also, I mean, as far as being locked, I mean, most of the traffic is from the water. You could just go up and untie them and take the whole boat away. When it would be a pain to take the boat up the ramp, I just don't see I don't see the security that they're getting out of that. That makes a difference, but.
And they never have once reached out to the state to ask if it was an option. I spoke with the guy in charge of their leasing there, because I did their snow removal for a few years, and he told me they'd be happy to accommodate them if they would ever ask.
Okay, I can bring this up. Like I said, we're still working on the lease with them, so this is something I can broach with them.
I would like to err as someone with no opinion on this larger problem. This grant is due May 16th, and I need to get through the public vetting to submit something. And Forest Service dock, net mending float there or not, I mean, this represents an opportunity to leverage like $1 or $2 million of city investment for $25 to $30 million, and I would just hate to see that opportunity get derailed by this specific focus.
Yep.
So as long as we're all thinking about the on-the-ground logistics of that timeline, just putting that out there.
I would say that we save that.
So, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from there, and yeah, you don't want to step on the toes of the feds, right, when we're asking the feds for money, right? The only thing I worry about is we keep kicking this can down the road. It's been 10 years we've been talking about moving them now. And this is going to be looked at 5 to 10 years from now, when I'm probably not even on this commission anymore. This is going to be the plan. If we don't get this grant right away or whatever, they're going to keep submitting it. And if we don't get it into this first plan and get it approved, it's never going to happen. I mean,
Can we reserve space?
Yeah, does this plan mean that the Forest Service gets this space?
I don't think so.
No, but at the council level, you're going to have some of the people be like, oh, well, this is the North Harbor plan. It doesn't say anything about moving the Forest Service, so why are you pushing that? You just have a vendetta against the Forest Service. That's the type of stuff I'm going to hear. So
There's 10 years of us telling them we want to move it.
yeah, but there's
It's there.
10 years of very softly, and 5 years, and 5 years. And it's
We can lose 20-some million dinging around for a $2 million little float.
yeah. I mean, in my opinion, they should have already been.
I'll put them in my truck, bring them home and work on them.
Well, that's what I do with my nets, but that's, I guess, my concern why I'm bringing it up now is because as we're going through, there's been a lot of talk, we don't want to do anything with them until we do North Harbor planning. Well, now we're doing North Harbor planning, and then we don't want to do anything with them because it might cost us our grant. At some point, we need to plan for that space. Whether or not we include it in this grant application, I guess, on a picture somewhere, I want to have it put future use from harbor. I mean,
I can a pen.
So I would just add one thing. This is a portion of the North Harbor plan. I mean, we still need to do a full North Harbor plan. Right now we're obviously pushing for this part because of the grant deadline, but that doesn't mean once the grant's been applied for that we won't or can't continue to work on the larger North Harbor plan.
So basically, we're talking perimeter. And
Yeah,
then when
this-
we're gonna go back and address the North Harbor float system and other,
Like you're doing on the South Harbor, you kick the L float out, but that's going like a phase 2 there, right?
The L float is not going to a phase 2. I believe the bulkhead potentially is if we can't find the funding. Although I would be surprised if we don't build some sort of bulkhead.
Well, that's what I meant, is that we're not trying to do it on this one grant we have going down.
Well, L-float, we decided that due to them shrinking the size of the entryway between the North and South Harbor, that L-float's just not going to work. We can't, unless we move the breakwater and everything else, so, or dredge and
Did a
sheet
bunch of
pile. and
dredging.
There's a lot more to it than we had hoped.
Were you talking L float as in,
Against the bulkhead.
no, that's M float, right?
It's L now, huh?
It's L.
Oh, L now. Okay.
Yeah, some confusion, I guess, there. You mean L in the,
Previous.
right now?
No, I mean L like against the bulkhead when you put that bulkhead in. I thought that was
Oh, that's going to be
phase 2 of it.
M?
That was supposed to be.
2 O's, 2 N's?
There's
I
an,
don't-
N and 2 O's.
there's an M and an
I
N.
know, version control.
So,
But right now, we're talking about
The north side.
the
I was
north,
saying you could have that in the second phase too, then.
yes.
Yeah.
And that harbor, we're gonna have to, I actually think that's a great place for a multi-use float. Right there.
Where are we talking now?
Oh, maybe it's not as long, so it doesn't stick, the Forest Service float.
Oh,
I'm talking about.
okay, okay.
Maybe it's not quite as long as it is now, but it's fatter, so it doesn't stick out as far into this zone that's gonna be getting to the big crane and the major unloading dock. But if that's a sheet pile dock right there with that's gonna have the crane on it, I don't think we want any like, regular parking spots. I think we wanna keep that clean because you could bring boom trucks in there and whatever.
And would this group like a 5-ton crane there or a 1,500-pound crane?
It looks to me like the best spot for a 5-ton because you gotta put in a serious pedestal and then we're doing it on land that we're building, so we can build it, or whatever the engineer says, pour concrete, steel, whatever it needs. But if we're trying to put it out on a float, then it gets expensive to beef up the whole float to take a 5-ton. But we don't have any other spot right now that I don't think that I can think of that works for a 5-ton crane scenario.
well, I mean, I'm sure we can make that dock work. That's where I put the boom truck and I do all those big 5-ton lifts. I mean, I pick a 10,000-pound bait shed with all my longline gear in on and off that dock right now.
What dock?
The T dock. But it's just not built into the dock. So, I
Right.
mean, we put the foot of the boom truck out on that like steel pad and then, it's got it spread out way bigger than what a crane would have. And
Yeah.
so,
And it'll still be good for boom trucks.
yeah, you can still use it for boom trucks. Yeah, I guess maybe some sort of a concession to, I guess we never really voted on my amendment, so I guess it died because I didn't really know how to word it. But, if we just include a removal and relocation now, we can argue about what type of float to put in there later. Just say we don't want to have long-term parking there because this is going to become a working zone for the whole fleet.
Right.
Is that maybe like a,
So what you're after is referencing this area in this plan with this grant application so that it is covered, if you
Yeah.
will, when it comes up later that in addition to 5 years, 5 years, 5 years, we now are
yeah,
setting this up with a big crane right in front of it and we want boat access in there and we might put a different shaped float in there, but
right. Yeah, not a long-term parking situation.
so where would that have to be referenced so that if we decide that's the will of the Harbor Commission right now, that it gets
So if everybody's on the same page with that, I mean, you don't necessarily need to do a official amendment, because I don't think we need to add a whereas for that. I think that'd be good to be referenced in the grant. And then we would also, talk with Planning Commission and Harbor Commission that this is a, like a tweak to the design. Because I mean, we're not removing the crane. It's just moving the crane and then, doing some other things. So as for a concept for the grant, I think that if you did pass the resolution as it is, it still gives staff the liberty to tweak things around as long as we're not adding or removing major components. So
What is the harm in adding, I mean, just so that I'm perfectly clear, what is the harm of adding Ken's whereas about a general floating workspace?
So, because that would then mean that that is part of the grant, and we would have to do that as part of the grant.
It would have to be spec'd out.
Have to be, okay.
Because even this float over, I mean, this is pretty much all attached to land except for this fuel float, which is not their problem. They don't have to spec it out. That's going to be by whoever puts the fuel.
But we're already going to be removing the science center. I mean, as part of this, we're demoing the whole science center. We're demoing the grid. We're demoing an entire approach. So for us to go pull a couple more pilings and demo that dock out of there, that's the time to do it. I mean, and we've been talking about it for 10 years, so I guess I just get a little frustrated when every time I talk about, hey, we need to move them, that space can be utilized by the whole fleet. Everybody, what I get is, oh, well, we need to do it when we do our North Harbor planning. Well, now we're doing the North Harbor planning, and I want to get it in the plan because I know 10 years from now, you're going to have people pointing to this plan saying, oh, well, you didn't bring it up then, so it's not on there.
I don't think that'd be the problem. I think more of the problem is that we can dig around and we've all died before they get this even done. If we lose this grant, we're probably not gonna get another chance at it.
No, they do PIDP every year, so.
I do.
We
think
wanna
a big-
get it now.
A big selling point of this right now is that NEPA is being completed concurrently for the North Harbor, and a major pitch of the grant will be that this is shovel ready for 23, 24, alongside the South Harbor rebuild. I think our chances are a little better this next year to get this. I don't know how much better, but just wanted to note that.
They got a lot of federal money floating around now.
And I talked to the PID reps for Alaska, actually in Anchorage on Monday, and they were pretty excited that we had NEPA done. And remembered the exact project from last year that we applied with. I think PID last year, they had funding for about half of their applicants. Their budget has tripled. So there's a decent chance, I'd say 1 in 3, that we could get the grant.
So do you think there's any way we could get a net mending float in with it? Or is that going to kill our chances?
I guess I don't understand enough about the political machinations necessary with what's going on with the lease, for that to be publicly vetted inside of a month, actually much less than a month.
Okay, well, there is no lease. I mean, it never got extended.
We have holdover agreements with them so the previous lease is extended currently.
That's $1 every 50 years.
No, it's up to market rate, but it's year to year. It's not a long term.
We did end that one, but
For clarity, are you saying that if you were to add an amendment, that it would be to just remove the Forest Service dock and do nothing currently, or remove it and add the net mending float?
I would like to do both, but if, I was offering another alternative is let's just get it removed while we're in there tearing out the Forest Service, or while we're in there tearing out the Science Center. We already have that equipment mobilized there, so let's get that removed as well, and it can be the turning space for large boats to get to that crane. And then in the future, if we want to add another float there, we can. But
Is there going to be a BCA?
You're talking of pulling that whole dock out,
Because they increased the grant, and then you didn't increase
Piling stock and
including the ramp and everything going to the.
no,
I guess it's just been talked about for years that we want to remove the Science Center and the.
talking about is taking off that from there out.
Where's the
The float and the lamp.
We bring it to
Mhm.
council, and then council makes a different decision. I don't know.
The access ramp,
Yeah.
not the timber.
They do own that building too, right?
They do own the building.
But not the dock underneath it. It's a tricky spot.
I guess I don't really feel like it's that tricky. We've been talking about it for 10 years, but
Well, I'm just saying is that you own a building, you
time
don't
we
own
have.
the floor, you know, that's kind of a tricky thing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you own a building? You don't own the floor.
This has to go through everything, planning commission and council and everything, right, before you can present it?
this has to go through that process anyway.
I understand, but I mean, we did like 2 weeks to do it, and you're in May already.
Yes, the option is to move the crane and have room for it and document that space will be reappropriated, or to put in the removal of that dock and maybe stir up hornet's nest at the same time. Right.
I guess I don't feel like it's a hornet's nest because it's been talked about for years and everybody's kind of said, oh, well, when we do our North Harbor planning, we'll talk about removing it and putting something else there. And it's like everybody wants to just keep kicking the can down the road on that topic because nobody wants to tell the Forest Service they need to move out. And I just come off as the bad guy because I'm pushing it, but that is prime harbor real estate that we rented for 50 years for $1. And now it's, $1,500 a year. I'd gladly pay triple.
What we're doing here isn't gonna make anything, the council's gonna do that.
Oh, yes, it does. They'll look at this, and if it's still on there, they say, oh, I guess they changed their mind. They don't want to remove them.
No, it is true.
I've heard it. I mean, I've been on the council table. I'm on there now. I've been at planning and zoning meetings. I've talked about this exact same thing, and everything that gets thrown in my face is, well, how come it's not written down? How come you don't have a
It is
plan?
written down.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Nobody sees it in a picture, so that means it's not written down.
Well, it's written down in our plan.
I mean, all we have in our master plan is that we want to use this area for future expansion. We didn't have any details. The master plan is very vague, and that's what gets thrown in my face every time I talk about it. You and I know that we've talked about it for 10 years because we've been here for that long, and we've been on this commission. I just want to have it in this application and in this picture because the public is going to see this picture and they're going to use it for a decade.
What's the likelihood that decision, let's just say that decision got made tonight, what's the likelihood that council agrees with this?
I think that it would fly. I do. I think that it would be, we've been talking about it for 10 years that we want to use that area. If we remove it, it's not going to be a surprise to anybody.
I don't think they would pass it.
Yeah,
We don't have
I also
agreement
don't
with
think
the
they would pass
Forest
it.
Yeah,
Service.
I mean, we've passed 3 resolutions from here about it, and
Yeah, every time we tell them 5 years. No, the last one was 2 or 3 years ago already, so they don't have a lease currently. They don't have an extended lease. They're asking for 20 or 30 years, and they're not backing down on that.
Well, that's-
And I feel like, I mean, council might strip it out, but so what? If they strip it out and pass it without it, that's fine, but
So here's a, here's a measure. We move the crane. We take out some parking areas so that the crane is well accessible.
Would that be both rows or just the waterside row?
Just the water side.
yeah. I was thinking you can get away with 7 or 8 spots, something like that.
Because you got the street turnout too to use it. Yeah, anyways, it's kind of.
I feel like we'd want to shrink the commercial lease area slightly. I don't know if that affects your multipliers though.
For,
And put like a turning radius for loading and unloading off that crane. Or a workspace. I don't know how to delineate that.
I don't know how big that area is, but that square
What's the
out,
width of the cars,
completely out.
car spaces? What are they, 10?
10. I think it says 10 foot.
And if you took 8 of them, you'd have 80 feet in there.
That's
And move that crane to the center of it.
So, and then we just, because we're putting in this beautiful crane and we want to make it accessible to the big boats, we take off the Forest Service float and the approach ramp, the the gangway. And then that leaves better access to this existing dock, that Camp 2 dock, if you will, right now. And it gets better roomed in there. And if there's room later, after we see what happens, maybe we talk about putting a float in there. But right now, the grant doesn't have anything to do with the float. But it does have clearing the area. So we got the Science Center building, and we have that one float. And then we have enough room for boats to come in and use the crane.
Yeah. And I mean, we could put the floating fuel dock there. There's.
Well, it frees up that
Yeah.
area, but we're gonna lock in that crane, so we don't want the floating fuel dock. I think we want to keep it to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the crane right now is still, feels like it will be impeded by traffic at
Yeah.
the fuel dock. I mean, this,
it looks-
again, this feels very tight.
That
All of
looks
this
tight.
feels tight,
That looks tight, and
especially when we're talking about the kind of boats that are going to use a 5-ton crane.
Right.
like the Stavanger.
Yes.
There's part right there.
Yeah. There's two ways to solve it. If you move that floating fuel dock where the Forest Service dock is right now and just left the crane in place, you'd have plenty of turning radius in there. Or you could move the crane, lose some parking spaces, and remove the Forest Service dock and gain your navigating space that way. You could, obviously that is just a conceptual, so that's not how the dock's going to be.
Sure.
You could bring it closer to the fill like you talked about, Andy.
Yeah, it could be closer to the fill, or if you move the fuel dock over, then you could have maybe a net moving float closer to the fill. 6 to 1, half dozen the others, but it would be nice to have a clean shot in and out of there.
I understand the reasoning behind wanting to avoid that hot button topic because of this tight timeline. I just know that for years, the only thing that gets told, like I said already, is just that, everybody tells me, oh, well, that needs to be addressed when we redo the whole North Harbor.
Not in that hole.
Now we're doing that, and everybody's scared to touch it. So, because of the time.
I don't think we're scared. I think we want to make sure that we don't
want to lose
jeopardize.
100%,
Yeah.
2%.
Yeah. But I do think that what we just discussed is, I think it's reasonable.
I don't feel like moving or removing or replacing the Forest Service dock is going to kill this plan at council. I truly don't. I feel like what they've been saying for years with a lot of this existing council members is that they wanted to see a full North Harbor plan before they proceed with removing it. And I feel like this gets us closer to that goal. Maybe there's still more that needs to be done, but as far as the Harbor Commission's concerned, we're talking about our basin. And if, the rest of the community wants to start talking about the uplands planning for that North Fill area, that's, a greater topic. But I feel like we have jurisdiction over the basin, and I'd like to see us make the changes we want to see and get it on paper, because we can talk about it and then if it's not in a picture, nobody cares. And even when it is in a picture, half the time nobody cares.
If we're putting a bulkhead in there, is there room for them inside their building?
What do you mean inside their building?
Like between their building and shore.
Around the back corner of
Oh, okay.
There.
I mean, they're really pretty maneuverable little boats.
Those are small boats.
Oh, taking that float and tying it to the bulkhead, you mean?
Just, yeah.
It's an option.
And, you know, because we're gonna dredge up to the thing and then we keep the. I don't
Yeah,
know,
I mean, there is that space, there's that whole quadrant
There's a
right there.
space in there that
It doesn't
would
have
be
to be.
tight, they could still lease the space for their building and they could run the ramp down and put a lock and key on it, I guess. Instead of one. Yeah, anyways,
That's a creative solution.
Can we just agree to open our master plan in our next meeting and put this discussion in writing in our next meeting? If it's that you want it documented, we'll have maps, we'll have a resolution, we'll have a forward, we can have an updated master plan, at our next meeting, vote on it, have the example. It gets this captured, we just doesn't do it in a resolution. We put that on the agenda, and we can write that up.
yeah, there's nothing that, what we're doing tonight precludes us from doing this.
Does this resolution need to reference this removal?
This doesn't say anything about the science center
Right.
in this resolution.
Yeah.
That I saw.
Is there anything with the PIDP that,
I believe there's one line, Andy, on cost savings for the city, or maybe not in the resolution itself, just in the attached.
We moved the old science center building, it says
Yeah.
there.
Oh, where's that? I'm sorry.
Commission meetings for.
Oh, in the background.
Yeah, and fiscal impact, it's the first bullet.
Well, it's under new business too.
Right.
is there anything in the PIDP like says it's only for uplands, you can't do floats? Is that
No,
like a
no,
thing?
we could put a float into the concept, and I think if you were funding the removal of a dock, that probably is advantageous.
But it says save, eliminate demolition costs for PISWAC building to be borne by fuel provider. So we're not actually asking money to remove that.
I thought an advantage of this location, Forest Service conversation aside, is that that building will need to be demoed by the city to accommodate almost any other use. And in this case, that the cost for that demolition would be almost certainly borne by whoever's putting infrastructure in its place. That would be part of the negotiation for the ground lease. Of course, we haven't gotten into negotiating any of that, but that would seem to be a compelling argument.
Right. But there's not money for the city to take it down, right?
Correct. That will be.
Or
that
we do it and then we would charge
I don't think so. I think that would be like.
their responsibility.
Yeah.
You want to put something in here? You clean out this stuff. Okay. So there's already, all right, well, it seems to me that it is pretty defined to this uplands development. And I like the idea of dealing with our in-the-water infrastructure plan at a defined meeting with a defined agenda item. And we let this go as written with the crane moving, some sidewalk,
Ken, I know it gives you
Orienting.
heartburn, but if you look at it, it really is about the uplands. And
Look.
I think it's a good compromise, what Brandy has suggested, to, at the next meeting, get out the master plan, capture this, and keep moving it forward.
and we put a 5-ton crane right in the way.
Yeah.
You gotta clear
We have to
space for it.
have
I mean,
access to the 5-ton crane, so that
That's
really,
it's a nice Prince William Sound asset, a 5-ton crane, and that's nice. Whittier doesn't have anything like that. Valdez has that one big crane, but it's at a goofy spot.
Yeah,
They
like
didn't think
above
about
their
where they
grid.
put it. The
Yeah.
grid, you have to, like, how am I gonna get in there, 15-ton or 15,000-pound crane? You can't get a big boat in there
Yeah.
So-
on the high tide. It's-
You guys were talking about, it looks like it's tight with the fuel dock the way it is in the Forest Service dock. What if you pivoted just a little bit at the end of the fuel dock? You're still gonna have the back part of it where it's connected to the ramp. But you pivot it a little bit towards the
opening of the harbor. And maybe scooch it over a
Yeah.
little bit because it's
then you open that area up.
ways.
I think ultimately,
I mean-
the goal is to get rid of that.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, I mean, and it's not something that needs to be changed, I don't think, right now. It's
Yeah.
just something that is a thought that,
As long as do you think the crane can stay right where it is, or you still?
oh, no, I think that's a good idea you guys brought up, is
Yeah.
move it over away from that commercial area so you
Like
could
that.
get around it.
Yeah. I like
Yeah.
I feel like having that boardwalk get away from that big crane too. I mean, you don't want to have
People,
around a big 5-ton crane. Like that needs to be a work zone, and then yeah,
It's easy. You can just tie it up to that concrete sidewalk and then run the sidewalk over to the breakwater fill lot on the north side of that lease area.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. That's
And I would almost say we need to take part of that lease area and turn it into work area.
How much area is that lease area?
0.21 acres.
How many?
Bigger than some lots in town. know.
It's approximately an acre is,
100, is that
I
100,
believe it's
100,
52,000 square feet,
You know,
46,000 square feet, so, it's around, I guess, what's the math?
so
100,
It's pretty good
100
size.
feet, 100 feet, 100.
that's what it's looking like. Maybe a little less than 100 max, just by like maybe 80 by 150.
Better seeing how big an
Ish.
area, how many big a building can you put in there?
That gangway to the fuel dock's 80 feet for perspective.
Yeah. So turning that is
It's a good chunk.
But if they did like on the other lot, you'd have to build a building there, and then you have to have parking for that building. But that, you don't have all that much area there.
That would be included in the lease area, like that doesn't mean that a footprint of a building would be in.
I
the
understand, that's what
yeah.
I'm saying, that
Yeah.
you wouldn't get a very big building there if they had to have parking. Even that lot across the way, that was their big problem with the science center, is that they could put a building there, but they needed 20 parking slots or something. Or 10 or whatever it was, and there wasn't any room for that. Like code, something. At least that's what we were told. You have to have a building.
Yeah,
so many-
that's
you have
true.
to
There
have
is
so many
minimum parking requirements, but there's potential that as part of the plan that
That's
some
what
of
I was
them could
wondering, if
be.
you could just take part of that building away and you have room, but there's no room to take away. So,
Yeah.
I mean, not lot.
what are you guys envisioning the commercial space, especially when I look at like the little 0.03 acre spot over there behind Fish and Game.
Yeah, that spot specifically was dead space in the original plan I got from Chip, and if it's marked as commercial space, I can include the lease revenue and the BCA is really why that was just
Had more income.
tossed in there.
I got
Have a much
I-
minor reason.
I mean, it's not unfeasible. to-
I'm not against it. I'm just curious. I was just curious if there was.
So I personally envision a lot of this lease space to be like maybe like some food trucks or seasonal type businesses that are mobile. I mean, currently there's a couple of food trucks that are looking for a place to go in town, and they're having trouble finding
End area
spot.
filled up?
That doesn't have
Water and sewer.
doesn't have water and sewer hookups, and so it does work, but it is a lot more labor intensive to have a business out there. And I guess when we're going through this project, I'd really like to see us plan water and sewer hookups into these lease areas, so that way people could put little shops that could be coffee or
Or
whatever.
whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it's up to us to decide what
No.
businesses are going in there,
But
but forethought
yeah.
for some infrastructure, sure.
Get access to it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I really want to just be able to walk up and get a taco, but
I know, Ken.
You can.
yeah, I can on my side. But
Lower down to you on the hoist.
But on the north side, they'd be more protected in those commercial areas, little buildings, instead of
Yeah.
being out on the end there, where all the seagulls hang out.
yeah, you could have bait and tackle shops when we get our huge charter fleet here in the future.
Do we have a motion on the floor or anything, or?
We do,
We have a motion on the table.
we are still looking at the resolution. So if it's been moved and seconded and we're in discussion on it, and I was thinking that it's wording, sorry, yeah, it's wording. I think we can come back to it and see, does anybody have any issues with the wording of the resolution? And if we pass this, we would definitely put on our agenda to deal with our plan for the, for that science center, Forest Service dock area. And, you know, whatever we're gonna do next down there as far as changes in the Old Harbor, or North Harbor, sorry.
Yeah, I feel very strongly that we need to address that Forest Service float now, because this resolution and this picture is going to be referenced in any future North Harbor planning meetings as, and what people are going to say are, well, why didn't you address it when you submitted that plan? It's going to get thrown back.
Or
I mean, this has to go through all the proper vetting anyway. I know it's rushed. It's going to go from us, it's going to go to P&Z, then it's going to go to council.
We're gonna go past the deadline, and you're gonna lose it.
Well, why? It's got to go through all that anyway. So,
Start tomorrow instead of 2 weeks from now.
right,
2 weeks from now, you
we're
got,
starting tonight. It's not going to be 2 weeks from now if we just make a small change. It's the staff would update it for the P&Z packet tomorrow, or whenever it is that they meet. And they're gonna, I mean, when they kicked it back twice to us, and
Does this change
you kick it back again.
create a 2-week problem?
Um,
This proposed change?
no, if there's tweaks, I mean, we would have to just do our own modifications to this draft that would be put before P and Z, and then we may be able to get them, you know, professionally changed before council next week. But they might have to just also see a, you know, quote unquote redlined version of this based on any changes tonight. I know you're concerned about it not being in this plan, but I also do want to stress that the difference between a grant application concept and a master plan or a plan are very different. And while people may reference this in the future, this is a concept for a grant application and not a overall plan. So just, you know,
A
say,
master plan would have this plan in it.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
I think it is already.
the only thing that's in the master plan is that area for future harbor use. That's what it says in the master plan.
Expansion, yep.
Because originally we were talking about
Get into it.
putting stalls.
We'll do it we'll have it an agenda item.
Okay, well, I just know that this is
Already
gonna
put it
get
on.
referenced for years. Even if we don't get this grant, people will pull this back up and say, well,
And we'll have a better version for them.
yeah, I hope so. I mean, I just don't understand why it's missing from this when we've talked about it for 10 years.
So what would the shape of a net mending float be in lieu of that dock?
Just, I mean, basically like the size of the airplane float, but without the airplane stalls, or maybe just one airplane stall.
But does that not limit access to the
Yeah,
cranes?
no, I don't
I
think
guess
it can
that's
be
the
that
part I
big.
am having
I
trouble
don't
with.
think it can be that
You just
big.
replace the one with a bigger one.
I was thinking something 40 by 50, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can angle it different though if you're putting it, I mean, you can have it more straight out, so it's not limiting access to the loading dock or to the crane.
The airplane float is 130 feet long. So I think 50, I can't remember exactly how wide, but
You know, we could bring over one of those rebuilt chunks of J float, slide it right in there for the Forest Service. They'd have a beautiful dock to tie up to. Each boat would have its own. It depending on how far that bulkhead comes out. That's a nice little notch right there, and it clears them out of the way, and it gives them a nice cozy spot.
And they haven't given hardly anything up.
Right.
And
Building.
And the harbor users still are getting better access, better usable space.
But we don't need to figure that out for this resolution. Because we're gonna put the crane there and we're gonna have a sheet pile across there, so we're gonna have.
In order to do that, science center's gotta go.
Well, we're talking about having the
Yeah, I
fuel
know.
dock people take it out. So,
But I mean, it's got, no matter who takes it out.
I don't think that's ever going to fly, honestly. Especially if we're putting in a bulkhead and dredging it and we're trying to make usable crane space, like we're going to have to share that cost. There's no way that the fuel provider is going to pick up that entire dredge area.
building removal.
But it gives them skin in the game, which also gives that match of,
Yeah.
local match from them doing some of the work.
Yeah, I think you could probably get them to do some of it, but I just don't think we're going to get all that dredging done by them, especially when they're not getting the benefit of all the space.
Second part of that thing, I thought it was just taking the building down.
I referenced demo earlier, but yeah, again, I don't know the exact details. I think you're right, it would be some cost sharing, but even so, that's likely a pretty good deal.
We would obviously, work for the city's best interest and try to get them to bear as much of the cost as possible. But, obviously we can't say how that it's going to be 100% of it. So
But this grant puts the bulkhead in, it doesn't necessarily do any dredging, right?
No, the dredging would be part of the
yeah,
grant.
Oh, what?
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's necessary for the fuel dock, which is necessary for the matching funds for the grant. So there's no way to split those out.
Okay. So I agree with Kenny. I think that there's gonna have to be some
Yeah.
give there. There's no way that's gonna.
I didn't mean to reference all the dredging earlier. I was talking about the demolition, but maybe
I got
that would be.
I don't know if you did. Just in my mind, demo and dredging kind of combine because they both have to happen.
Yeah.
But
Demo, dredging.
yeah, I mean earlier the argument was brought up that this is strictly doing uplands, but I do see in here a lot of existing North Harbor float system upgrades and a fire suppression system that are on floats. So I would, I guess, argue that adding a float component isn't necessarily adding something new that's not already there. We're already upgrading our existing floats to benefit the whole fleet.
I don't think there's any problem with in-water work alongside the upland work. That won't be an issue, for what it's worth.
I honestly feel like adding a net mending float is going to be, our best way to get one for the fleet to use is going to be to do it right now. And I don't think it's going to hold anything up at P&Z or at council because they've both been for years telling us, come up with a plan, then we'll move them. But until there's a plan, we're not going to move them. So here's our chance to put it in a plan, put it in front of them.
So we have this area between the new fill, the new bulkhead, and the existing approach. And in order to free it up for use, we need to dredge, we need to demo the existing structures that are there and dredge. Then we'll be ready for fuel dock and I just think it's important not to get hung up on where things are going when we just need to define that space will be used for a floating fuel dock and a net mending float, and if there's, I think there's probably room to shoehorn in a few slips, for the Forest Service next to their building as well, but reorganizing that whole area, the first thing that's gonna have to happen is demo and dredge in order for it to be worked.
If they flip that float they have and laid it against where their building is, straight up and down through there, that make any difference? Just take that dock and just flip it sideways, so it's pointing north and south kinda, and lay it against the piling. I don't know how you get to it, but.
Yeah, I think the ramp would be pretty.
But I think it would be better, I think it would be better if we're,
Use that crane to lift everything.
get a fire pole down there or something. I think it would be better if we just defined what we were talking about doing and not try to make it all
Design it.
figure. Yeah, we don't need to design it.
Yeah,
We want it cleared and dredged.
Yep.
For this,
For a fuel dock, a net mending float, and a
and
crane.
access to the crane.
Yeah, and crane access. So is there a way that we could just like put a big gray blob around that area and just say fuel dock, net mending float? Do we, or does
Sorry,
it,
for the application?
yeah, does it help to have a little conceptual float in there?
I think there should be a location pinned in the application, but
Okay.
that wouldn't be a big problem to change if funds were awarded.
as long as it was completed.
Yeah, you're not rescoping, or, I mean, all your outcomes are achieved the same way. But I would not put a blob,
Okay.
yeah.
Put a blob.
Well,
So are you guys envisioning flipping the location of the fuel dock and the potential net mending float where the Forest Service is, and placing the net mending float where the fuel dock is currently located on this conceptual?
I kind of, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Whichever works best for, there's so many things with the fuel dock, the plumbing, the different things that their own, maybe having their own acts, I don't know what. But I do agree that it could be flipped. I don't see any reason why.
Well,
Could have one in one spot and one in the other, but, if
yeah,
you-
I think what he was saying is that the cost sharing wouldn't be there if you flipped it, because putting it where the Forest Service float is like completely shovel ready.
well,
Wouldn't have to do any dredging.
except for it would be pretty short compared to what it is. Like, if we keep it as long as it is and then cack the end of it over towards the opening a little bit, and then we can utilize the full length of it, where it is, and let's keep it where it is.
Yeah.
It replaces the Science Center building, and then this other one could be a different shape that doesn't stick out so far and impede that access to that crane.
Yeah, I mean, it could go,
And it doesn't need to be that big, right? 40 by 50 would work for a seine, right?
yeah, it's a little small, but I mean, you can make it work.
But you'd have room to get on one side and pull it, like you're saying, stack it and pull it over. And there's definitely plenty of room for a few gill nets. And the airplane float is all broke up and goofy, and
Right.
it's not.
Yeah, I guess what is one section of the non-airplane float? I mean, like the very end, like in between the airplane stalls. What is that? Do you know?
Well, each one of those rectangles are 10 feet.
10 by 10s, I think.
No, it's 10 and then 8. I can't remember. I don't know for sure. I think the end is only like 40 by 50 or something.
I think it
It's not
is.
that big.
But it's,
Yeah.
I see what people are doing. I mean, I'm not putting Saints
So
on
it's
there, but
130.
It looks like that size area is, I mean, if you
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
have
if you
that in your
removed
harbor,
the-
it's a pain.
If you removed the airplane stalls and you scrunched it up, it would be 40 by 80. I mean,
Probably some, yeah, I don't.
40
Probably be a
by
little
80.
less than that, because those are, it should still be probably 100 with those two gone. They're 20 feet wide.
It still seems
90.
like this space can still lend itself to a net mending workspace that impedes this traffic area less than the existing Forest Service.
Yeah, you just switch the angle on it a little bit and it's
Make it a little
perfect.
fatter.
Yeah.
Make it a little fatter, a little shorter, and,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the whole fleet, the whole community. I mean, there's
And it doesn't have to be as heavy duty as like the drive down. It's
No.
Pretty,
No, yeah.
I mean, if it starts to sink, then the nets stop at some point. The
Yeah.
airplane float, I think is,
You definitely want to have a lot of flotation on the
Last
corners
legs.
if people are going to stack seines. That's one of the problems I've seen of the net mending float in Sitka is, well, they have huge herring nets. Might want to limit be like, hey, no bait seines on this thing if we ever get a bait fishery back. But,
did they sink that one?
oh yeah.
Think them.
Yeah, you sink the whole corner of the dock if you stack a Sitka herring seine on their net, on their float. They made a rule of no herring nets on their net float because of it. You have to go to the drive down. So. Yeah, it's just a wood dock that, I mean, it's an old net mending float, kind of construction of G float, but it works and it's a great, what's that?
It's giant.
It is big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should update our master plan no matter what. So that's a great idea for next meeting, but
Yep.
I really just feel like if we want to get a net mending float into that area, we need to get it included and make sure it's included because like we've heard this is our best chance of getting this money and I don't feel like it's going to slow it down. Worst case scenario, they strip it out and then proceed without it.
So where do we need to put, this needs to be a separate whereas? You guys help us out here. If we want to have,
Yeah,
I'm
so
envisioning something that says that we want to demolish the existing structures within the basin or remove, I guess it's better than demolish, remove, because we're not gonna.
I think that we don't really say anything about the actual demo. We just put, whereas construction of a net mending dock will improve efficiency within the fishing fleet by a lot. I mean, then I'm going to need some help there, but basically copy the same construction of a floating fuel dock will improve. Well, let's say construction of a net mending float will improve the functionality of the fleet or the harbor for the fleet, reducing the burden on the fleet to have to offload their nets to take them to an out.
It reduces all of the nets on
Right.
floats that aren't supposed to be there.
Yeah, reduces congestion.
So there's one. that says
Improves walking
additional
safety.
cranes. Look at
Increases
the
safety, yeah.
additional cranes one.
Yeah,
so if you're
An additional a net mending float will improve harbor efficiency for loading and unloading nets from vessels and relieve congestion at the limited number of.
I think it's going to improve. I mean, I can't even, man, I've tripped on nets. I've seen people trip on nets that are, I mean, you're never going to stop people from mending on the main float, but it's going to be a lot more people mending on the main float when we get rid of the airplane float and put a drive down dock in. And so it's going to be a walking pedestrian safety thing. It's going to be an ease for the fleet, an efficiency thing. There's economic, like 10 small businesses that mend nets. I mean, I don't even know. Krista might know better.
Yeah, there's a handful of net mending.
I mean, those are like independent contracting businesses that support their entire annual income off mending nets for 2 months. And that's going to help their business. So there is a lot of things that you could put into a whereas.
That's what I'm wondering, what to put it to whereas, 'cause
So-
we're talking around in circles.
if the commission's comfortable, somebody could make a motion and they could say something along the lines of that, add it, speak about the whereas in generalities, and then if you're comfortable with staff, making the final language for that. You could do something like that, unless somebody wants to come up with a whereas, and then if that's passed, we would then add that as motioned. I would also say that at whoever does make the motion, if you're going to, that at the end of the part about the whereas, that you direct the approximate like location that you're thinking of for us to include it in the drawing.
So whereas construction.
Yeah, but that'll be all right.
Netman info will improve efficiency.
And that, one drawing, is that area that's crisscross, is that the dredge area?
Yep,
Could that be moved over to include that, where that ramp is?
I think so, yeah.
And then say this is all going sometime?
What was that, Matt?
Well, instead of cutting around that, where that dock is, we just extend your zone there and say that all that's gotta go.
Yeah, that would be all part of
And
the
sometime or
dredge.
another, and that would cover that area.
Since we got the
When
dredge
you
in there,
dredge,
we
you
might as
gotta do
well
something.
clean it all up.
That way that whole area would be deep enough to put anything in, instead of this part way. That, at the end of that dock there where it goes down, that ramp goes down, it will line of sight, you're not doing anything in there. Back some of the piling, I think it's almost dry there at the base of that dock. So 3-4 foot minus.
Yeah.
You think it's necessary for it to say where, even though
It would
like,
just-
this floating fuel dock isn't specified where?
Just, it would be good to have specific direction from the commission on at least a general area, like if you are thinking of replacing the Forest Service float, then, say something along those lines so that it's, yeah.
Trying to figure, yeah.
You writing it out, Kenny?
That's what I got it.
That's what I thought.
Okay, so I guess this is my first attempt at it. Whereas construction of a floating net mending float, so construction of a net mending float in the location of the existing Forest Service float will greatly improve pedestrian safety on the existing float structure, will support small business net menders and fishermen, improve fleet efficiency, and provide a vital piece of harbor infrastructure.
So, right in the beginning, you said in the location of?
And we could put in the approximate
In the area
location
of?
in the area.
And it gives us a little more room, so.
Yeah, maybe in the area currently occupied by the existing Forest Service float, or maybe by the aging.
Occluded by or something.
Right.
But that
Definitely
would have
open
to- Yeah,
just some suggestions on wordage there, but I guess that would be, what do you think on that? You think that? covers-
I think that would work for a motion or for a whereas. Yeah. And if you think that would be good, Curtis, for the language for the
Yeah,
grant.
yeah, I'm fine with the language.
so we now have an amendment to the resolution on the tape. I'd say that it's out there. Do we get a second? Do we have a second to that? Or
I'll second.
second?
Wasn't
Is
sure.
there any discussion? There was the wording we wanted to fix. There was.
I mean,
what
I'm-
wording that you had.
I put, whereas construction of a net mending float in the approximate area of the existing Forest Service float will greatly improve pedestrian safety on the existing float structure, will support small business net menders and fishermen, and improve fleet efficiency and provide a vital piece of harbor infrastructure.
And that wouldn't stop anybody like from the Forest Service or moving their float in a different position to give us room to do that. They could still stay there and just, if they move their, or make a smaller float or something like that. It doesn't stop them from releasing if they want.
Well, that, where they are right now would be in the way for what
I
we want
understand
to
that.
do, but
They
yes.
move that float somewhere in a
I-
different position.
Or like Andy said, they, use one of these rehabbed slips from J Float and
See what fits, but
I mean-
maybe we can,
I feel like the ideal solution is just that they reach out to the state and park there.
Yes.
It's gated, it's locked. They can get a sweetheart deal. It's collaboration between government entities that already collaborate. Like whenever they leave the harbor, a trooper goes out with them. So I really don't, I mean, it's a common sense thing and it's just being fought for some reason. And I
I've
don't,
never really seen the state float full.
it's never full.
it's never full.
And the guy who's in charge of the state leases said he would be happy to lease them space.
One side is only have a couple boats on one side.
And all of their vessels are trailerable.
Oh, yeah, the Forest Service, right.
Yeah.
I mean, should we add another whereas? I guess we should vote on this one first, but a follow-up whereas saying, we've had it in other resolutions in the past, whereas there is other locations that can accommodate the
I don't think we need to
storage.
address that specifically here. I think that we stick to this grant and let that.
Okay. Maybe staff can bring that other resolution that's already been passed with this to the preceding meetings.
I really think that should just be a separate conversation, honestly. I think it would hold more weight that way. If we, and I also do want to say that staff probably will not have time to come back to you at the next Harbor Commission meeting to talk Harbor Master Plan because of grant deadlines and things like that. Not to kick the can down the road as has happened, but, I think maybe in a month or two, we'd have a little more bandwidth to start doing some more of that larger harbor master planning. We can definitely talk to the council and say that that was brought up as part of the reasoning for including the whereas, but I just think it should be its own separate standalone item to just make it more of a firm, I guess, I don't.
Right, I guess I was just meaning that like in the council packet, you could include that resolution from years ago that we've been talking about this for years.
Yeah, and we could just say that.
Simply just
because of that,
print it,
that's
put it in
where
the
this comes
packet,
from.
yeah. For maybe even for P and Z too, and like, listen, they've been talking about wanting to use this space for years, this is not new.
If, I mean, I would be more comfortable if all of the commission wanted us to do that, just so that we're not bringing something forward that's the voice of one commissioner instead of the whole body.
You were thinking that the advantage is that it'll
give this whereas more weight with people. To have, we've already passed those resolutions, so it was the full commission that passed those. All I'm saying is just
he's saying is
the
that
city staff should provide all of the pertinent information regarding this project to those who are making the decisions. I guess is all I'm saying.
That makes sense, yeah.
to have it as background
Yeah,
information.
yeah, yeah.
Does anybody have a
Because-
problem?
I have no problem with
With it-
them having more
Background
Yeah,
information
I think more background information from them is actually.
doesn't matter, okay, so.
Yeah, because it's already been
We're
passed
all
by
good
this
with
body.
that, yeah,
so.
I mean, it's a resolution,
We
and it
voted
talks
on it
about that
already.
area, so, and if questions come up, it'll help preemptively.
Yeah,
Target
Tony can
something
help
there.
us
You have a question on it,
pull
Rick?
which resolution that is.
We didn't pass it.
So we have a second on the resolution,
On
and
the
we're in
amendment.
discussion.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Did you like any
Fine.
language change or anything you happy with? Anybody else, Scott?
I don't know
I'm
enough about right
satisfied with
resolution.
that. Is that, do you think that that needs any language tweaking?
I think it's fine.
Great.
Do we want to do a voice vote, or is we good? Tony says yes.
It'd be good. We're gonna pass the resolution,
Yeah.
and the amendment and everything, so.
That's what I
Okay,
thought.
so we need to pass the amendment first and then have another vote on the resolution as amended, I believe.
So we'll do, first we'll pass,
Vote on the motion to amend.
Yep,
I think we vote on the motion to amend.
yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay, so the vote is for the motion to amend the resolution 4222202 to include language.
You want to just
Could
repeat
you
it, just so
read
for an
that?
official motion?
Do you have the language or do you want me to read it again?
I definitely do not have.
All right, whereas to add a whereas construction of a net mending float in the approximate area currently occupied by the existing Forest Service float will greatly improve pedestrian safety on the existing float structure, will support small business net menders and fishermen, and will improve fleet efficiency and will provide a vital piece of harbor infrastructure.
Okay, so that is the amendment. And we're gonna do a roll call. First,
You
we
can just
gotta-
do a voice.
Roll call vote on the
You can
resolution.
do a voice. I mean, just
As me.
ask all in favor.
Oh, you're good with that?
Can I actually make one belated suggestion? It might be nice to tie that back to the removal of the airplane float in the imminent South Harbor rebuild.
Like due to the,
That
due to the
seems
removal.
like an important piece of this conversation.
And will replace, maybe we could put, and will replace a vital piece of harbor infrastructure currently slated for removal in the
In the South Harbor.
South Harbor rebuild.
Rebuild.
With that,
Yeah, that would cover that.
We could have.
Okay, is anybody opposed to the motion? All in favor? Aye?
I,
All opposed? We passed. Resolution with amendments.
Now you pass the amendment.
pass the amendment.
Now you're
Pass the
gonna pass,
amendment.
now you're gonna pass the original.
Unless
Right.
there's other amendments, now you would move to pass the resolution as
All
amended.
right,
Right.
so can I get a motion to approve that resolution as amended?
I make a motion.
Second.
Okay. Are there any further discussion before we go? Okay, so, let's just do a voice call, roll call vote, Randy, on the resolution as amended.
Randy Drake,
Yes.
Max Weiss,
Yes,
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Krista Hoover,
Yes.
Nick Babbitt.
Okay. Thank you all for miscellaneous business. I don't see anything.
I guess I just wanted to make sure on that last one that the staff has proper clarity that we wanted to cant the fuel dock a little bit
Yep.
in the drawing.
Maybe, however far over we can, not as far over,
15
but I
degrees.
mean,
Yeah. And then move the crane. That's, you guys have
Yeah.
direction for that? Okay, cool.
And can I just run through the other suggestions while I have?
Yeah.
It was to relocate the pagoda thing by the Sky Bridge at the Reluctant, to move the sidewalk to the other side of the street, potentially going across Nikolov before crossing, and
I'm not so crazy about the going across Nikolov.
okay, to move
I
the
don't
sidewalk
see
to the
how
other
that-
side of the street.
Yeah, I think if we
Great.
put it to that side of the street, keep it down there, and then route it to the sidewalks
Okay,
that go.
Good.
along that side
And
of the-
to make sure the width of the additional drive-down ramp is accurately reflected,
Probably gonna be as wide as the one that's
And-
right there. Would take up that whole space.
I think that captures my.
I just saw another one that maybe is missing on here. So we're repairing the existing three-stage dock, but I don't see anything in here to replace the crane on it. I guess I would want to just suggest to staff to approach the marketing association and ask them for the money for it, because they have offered that in the past to, at least to evaluate the proposal. And it's a way that maybe we can get a free crane.
Yep, that's a conversation that's been initiated as
Yeah,
well.
and, possible more match
Sure.
to put towards
Great.
this, so.
you need a motion to have something on our agenda for next time. Going to
I think it's just
redo our,
direction
Yeah.
that we would like that, yeah.
Yep.
We'd like that as an agenda item.
I feel like that, the only thing maybe that was missing in that would be to relocate the, boardwalk away from the working zone around the large crane.
Yeah, we gotta do that.
Yeah, the crane's moving, but. Okay.
So the next meeting, we probably have that, get into our long-range plan. Work on that.
I already have it on there.
Yeah, it might take us a couple of meetings to get through it, especially because it sounds like city staff maybe doesn't want to do it on the next meeting, but
Well, I mean, we could just update, put an update in there on.
Yeah.
Generalize it if you want or whatever, but.
yeah, I don't even know if we
Yeah.
need them for that,
More
really.
than, say something more than we're thinking about it, like this is what we want.
I feel like it's really important that we go through that process before the city embarks on the North Harbor overarching plan. So that way they have something to refer to from us.
Audience participation. Do we have anybody on the phone? Nobody. Commission comments. Next meeting agenda items we got. I don't know. Krista, do you want to start with that?
Good work working through that. Yeah.
Oh, everybody looking at me now.
Sure.
It's all right, it's, kind of leery, it's gonna take too much time to get out for this grant, but I think we got it figured out pretty good. I think that resolution will mostly cover. We're not trying to tell somebody what they have to have, we're just giving them, we need this area, and this is what we need to put in there somewhere. Somebody else can engineer it in. But yeah, I think we got along pretty good. Then we can go back into our long-range plans for the north area, and update it so that everybody knows next time we look at it. Hope that works.
Yeah, well, I think they were doing a lot of work in that area. Maybe this is the best time to address it. At least start putting it on drawings and stuff. So, yeah, thanks, you guys. Good discussion. Go ahead, Ken.
It's a lot nicer when you can actually kind of see what's the land's gonna really look like.
Yeah, I mean, sorry it took so long for us to get through that. I just felt pretty strongly on that topic, and I just want to get the best harbor for the entire fleet. I just want to, I guess make sure that the Forest Service knows that I appreciate and respect their contribution to our community. I just want to see the space be utilized for the greater good of the entire fleet. And I feel like there is other locations that suit permanent moorage of their vessels. And thanks everybody for coming out, and thanks city staff for putting up with that.
Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn? Nobody's got anything else?
Adjourn.
Second.
Any opposed to adjourning? Oh, we're adjourned.